So, literally yesterday, I just released a video talking about what's new in WoW this week. And one of the topics that video was that Mythic Plus on beta felt harder, and I dived into analysis on why it felt harder. And I'm going to replay that part of the video only here so you could re-listen to it, or if you didn't watch that video, to get a summary of it. And that's with your tier set and everything. Now granted, this could be a scaling issue. It could be that they're just scaling the eye level too low, like too conservatively, and leaving players a little underpowered for the dungeon content, and they're struggling. Even Mythic Zeros, I did some Mythic Zeros, and while they were doable, they weren't too hard or anything, they felt high for a Mythic Zero, and that's taken into account that they're equivalent to what the old 10s were. Like, these were experienced players I was grouped with, and a few things were unforgivable, and one of the things that stood out was interrupts. As it stands now in Mythic Plus, almost none of the spells have this spell flag. Now what does this spell flag mean? Trigger, cooldown, and cast start. That means that as soon as the cast starts casting, even if you interrupt it with a stun, or a knockback, or daze, or anything other than an interrupt, it still went on cooldown and wasn't recast immediately. That's not what's happening on Mythic Plus right now. In beta, most of the spells do not have the spell flag like they do on live, which means if you use a shockwave, as soon as that stun ends, that spell is immediately going into recast. It is not on cooldown until either it's interrupted or the cast finishes. And that leaves you in a situation to where when you have a pack of mobs, or two groups of mobs you pull together and there's like 7 spells to interrupt, you literally need 7 hard interrupts to control those spells. You can't just pop Shockwave and put everything on cooldown like you can on both Mythic Plus and Live. Now whether this is a bug or an intended change is unknown. Some of us have been reporting the feedback because right now it does feel a bit overwhelming. The number of spells that you have to control with hard interrupts is too high. Like you have to pull smaller in a way if your group is not giga stacked with interrupts. And that's one thing that's making Mythic Plus feel harder than it normal. So I recorded that segment yesterday before the article and interview was posted today that said this. The stop meta. Ian was quoted saying this. The team has started designing specific abilities in dungeons to go on cooldown when the spell cast began. No matter what. So if you stop the cast in any manner, whether it was death gripping the mob or CCing it, it would go on cooldown just as it had been interrupted. This is still appropriate in some circumstances, but the increasing proliferation in dungeons of what kind of... I'm bad at reading, sorry. But the TLDR is... These tools should still be tremendously powerful tools for disrupting and managing, for relocating enemies in dungeons, but they shouldn't be the answer to near every problem that you're presented it in a way to visible comp diversity, whatever. Basically, it's not a bug. This thing I noticed that was making Mythic Plus harder is not a bug, it's an intended change. They no longer want CC to be used as an interrupt. That's the TLDR of lawyer speech here. So, I'm not crazy. What I noticed was in fact a change. But I gotta say, I'm good at noticing things. But anyways, what I want to talk about today is whether or not this is actually a good change. I think it is a good change for Delves, which is why I discussed that in my other video as well. They made this change in Delves too. Because originally the spell they had set that spell flag on all the spells in Delves in the earlier builds, but then they removed it because they had the same problem where certain classes were better at Delves than others because they had more CCs. And they're trying to make equilibrium across the board for those because you can solo them. But dungeons you can't solo. You have 5 players. So they might have gone too far in one direction, I think. It might be a case where not all spells should be interrupted like this. But from what I could see, almost no spells are interrupted like this. So it's like typical Blizzard, The meter is over here. It should be over here. They put it over here. You know, every time, and then when it's this is a problem. Again, it should be here. They're gonna go back over here. You know, this is Blizzard has been going far left and far right for the entirety of this game, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon. Like, I don't think they've ever been able to find the middle ground in almost anything. Yeah, I think stuns. I think they should make the CCs work somewhat, but not like as good as they have in the past. And I need to dial back the dungeons too. Like, one thing they have to remember, they're reusing dungeons that were used recently. We have Shadowlands dungeon like Mists and Necrotic Wake in here, who have just as many spells as they did in Shadowlands. All the mobs have the same abilities, but now we have less interrupts for them than we did in Shadowlands. And that's what we felt the most. Like, you have to remember, if they're using a new philosophy, they can't use old dungeons on the old philosophy and just make them work. They're gonna have to go back into these dungeons and dial back these spells, increase their cooldowns, or eliminate some of them even. Like, this is the feedback we need to give. If they're going down in this direction, then we need to tell them these dungeons that were designed with the old philosophy in mind, where you could shockwave to interrupt the spell, need to change, because there's a lot of spells going off because, you know, the group I had when we were testing did not have 7 interrupts for like 1 trash pull. There's just too many casts if this is going away. If you can't use CCs to break a spell cast and put it on cooldown, there need to be less spell casts. Like, if they're trying to change the meta, they can't use old dungeons that were designed for the old meta. That is a very key point here. Affixes. They're still doubling down that these new affixes that nobody likes and everyone is universally saying are bad and get rid of them are staying. They're still dead set on keeping them, but I think Blizzard has lost their way on what affixes were for in the first place. When affixes were added to the game, they were added as a solution to solve a problem in doing the same dungeons the entire expansion. Like, I don't have the exact interviews up, but I know it's been talked about more than once in the past. And I'm sure some of you viewers remember or be able to find an interview link, and if you can, that'd be helpful. But they always said that affixes were designed to put a fresh take on running the same dungeons over and over again, because in Legion, you know, and Battle for Azeroth, you ran a dungeon pool the entire expansion. So to make it interesting for Season 2, Season 3, they mix it up with affixes. This is no longer the case. They've now solved that problem by having a new dungeon pool each season. So why do we even still have affixes at all? Nobody likes affixes. They're not fun. And now that we have an actual solution to the dungeon pool to where it rotates seasonally, the original design intent of the affixes is no longer applicable here. So why are they still using them? In fact, even doubling down on them and making them even worse. Doesn't make any sense. They're trying to diversify the dungeons 2 times over. I feel like what they should be doing with the affixes literally is removing them. Get rid of them. Or at least get rid of all the stupid, annoying ones, and maybe keep like some of the little ones that have slight flavor. You know, they can keep, you know, fortified or tyrannical, so that there's at least that interesting thing. You know, every other week is a little different. Like, I could see them keeping that, but that's all I need to keep. They can get rid of everything else. You know, what they're trying to solve with affixes, it's just not the way. Just like, I know what they're trying to... They're trying to stop meta. They really just want to get rid of the meta of having one comp be good at everything. Which is why I understand why they're doing the spell cooldown change. But they need to adjust the tuning accordingly, because they haven't done that yet, and that's why Mythic Plus and Beta, people came in time with 3 at appropriate eye level right now, because it's like, well, it's a shit show, at least for the pug scene. I'm sure you can go on Twitch and find like now and other skilled players shitting all over the dungeons. That's not what they should be designing the players for overall. You know, That's what MDI and the Great Push are for, or really high keys. But if pugs are struggling to get to a 3, that's a fucking problem. That's all I'm gonna say. So yeah, there's some tuning to be done there. But affixes, doubling down on them, it just shouldn't be that way. Like the new affixes they put in there trying to shake up meta are already creating new metas. They haven't even been able to see that yet. They haven't been able to realize it like the players have because, it's just a handful of devs. But, when you take the hive mind of players, millions of players can see a problem sooner than a handful of devs. This doesn't mean the devs are bad or they're idiots. That just means there's a lot more minds on one side versus the other. The players, their wheels are spinning. They're going like, oh yeah, I know exactly what my comp is going to be this week and that week. And oh, Vengeance Demon Hunter is the optimal tank because their abilities use chaos damage, which is effective against all the affixes they're just created. So they're already creating new metas before Blizzard has even deployed this solution that they have to break the old meta. Like it's a cat and mouse Blizzard can't win. So I wish they'd stop trying to win it, because they will never win it. Players will always be 10 steps ahead because they have far more minds working on the problem. Players they will always find the new meta no matter what a developer does, so it's nearly a pointless struggle to try. Now, certain things they can do to try, like I still think the interrupt change probably will help. Like, that's actually a positive change, especially for pugs, because it was only the higher skill cap players that truly optimized using grip and stuns, etc. to stop casts and put them on cooldown. That wasn't something you saw vastly in pugs. So, reeling that utility in is probably a good thing for, the 80%. And I think that'll be a positive change once they actually fix the dungeons that they're reusing that were still designed for the old philosophy. But the affixes, they have to go because they're just not doing any favors. Like, if they want Mythic Plus participation to be good, and they want any player to get an invite, like they're trying to break the meta, this is the opposite direction. Because you will always have players that are better than an affix than the other that are invited that week. Yes, even if these affixes do make it so, like, last week, Prot Paladin was good, but this week it's Prot Warrior. And because, it's Bleeds week. And last week was Holy Damage week. It's... And their line of thinking is like, yes, victory. We changed the meta because you're bringing different tanks. That's very small picture looking at it, because it's still a meta. It's just a rotating meta now. Because last week was still the Prot Paladin meta, and this week is still the Prot Warrior meta. You're still fucked if you're not the right class that week. So you didn't really change anything. You just made it rotate now. But it's still a meta. Meta is meta. It will always be that way. Players will always bring what's best from a week-to-week basis. So instead of having a seasonal comp that's the right comp, now you have a weekly comp. This didn't fix a thing. It just made it even more convoluted and annoying for players to understand. I don't think players will understand this easily. All they're going to understand is last week they can find a group, and this week they can't. What the fuck, Blizzard? That's what players are going to understand. It's not good for the game to have that kind of a design, and it should be thrown out the window before it ever goes to live. If this goes live this way, it's going to be like Covenants 2.0. Like, I'm telling you now, people are not going to be happy with this, and it's going to be a shit show until Blizzard pulls the ripcord on this one. Because nobody, and I mean nobody, wants this. You're not going to go find a single YouTube video out there going, hell yeah, Blizzard, you're doing the right thing. No, they're all going to be saying the same thing. What the fuck are you thinking? This is not going to work. This is going to piss off players and make Mythic Plus even less approachable than it is now for, entry-level players and the mid players, while still having the high-end players still metagame. So nothing will change. They'll just go a few steps backwards in the wrong direction when they're trying to go steps forward. So, yeah, this is what I want to talk about in this video. It's a bit ranty, but I hope I get the point across. I'm sorry I didn't read this all. I'm very terrible at reading, especially, I hate to say it, but I turned 42 this week, and it might be, what in the near future, I might be making the text on the screen a little bigger just so I can read it better. But it is what it is. But thank you for watching my rant on this, and hey, two days of video in a row. Not bad. But thanks for watching, and hope to see you in the next one.